All right, y'all. Back to SPG Unfiltered, where high performers come to get real about what it actually takes to rebuild from the ground up. I'm your host, Steven Gerraughty, Marine Corps vet and founder of SPG Fitness and Wellness, and someone who's uh, walked a long road through trauma, burnout, some real rock bottom mental health. So this episode is a little bit personal. Today we're talking trauma, how it shows up in the body, how we coach through it, um, and how we stop re-traumatizing uh, the very people we say we're trying to help. I've got Coach Allie with me again, someone who knows how to meet clients where they're at, not where we wish they were. Um, we're going to unpack some military PTSD, some childhood trauma, some narcissistic abuse, how fitness, when done properly, can be part of the healing process. And yes, we're going to talk about marijuana as well and some other um, options that people may have because we need to stop pretending some things are not tools to be used, right? So let's go.
Right.
Um, I think trauma isn't just a mental thing. It can definitely be a physical thing. I've experienced it myself. Um, it lives in your nervous system and like your breath, your posture, your recovery, your motivation. It really shows up in the gym with you every single day.
hmm
And we break down trauma into a few different categories with our clients, but let me hear a little bit about you and your experiences with coaching people with PTSD or any sort of um, similar conditions.
Yeah. So, I mean, being in the field as long as we've been and being just in fitness, you come across a lot of different things. And in my time training, I've come across military vets that come in and they're looking for ways to help their body from being broken, but they're also dealing with PTSD or CPTSD. So we have to kind of navigate that very carefully. But then you also run into people dealing with long-term issues from childhood, and that manifests in a couple different ways. And it's not just, yes, you do see things manifest in the body physically, but then you're also seeing changes within the brain itself, which is very interesting, especially for childhood trauma. And then you see kind of this other category as well. And I think we're starting to see more of it now that people are starting to actually understand what it is with narcissistic abuse in relationships, kind of especially that. And I have noticed a lot of the narcissistic abuse and childhood trauma kind of like coming together as one, and they're kind of shared in some people, and that's been very interesting to see how people are physically dealing with it, but also mentally and emotionally dealing with it as well. It's been interesting to see and to deal with, at least on my side, because it's not just manifesting in the gym in their workouts, but it's also manifesting in their personal life as well. So it's trying to navigate and not also overstep boundaries as a trainer of how can we perform this session today and do what we need to do, but also actually physically help you as a person too.
Yeah, I think that's huge because realistically, we've talked about this. Sometimes we're therapists for people,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we do kind of have to be careful in a professional sense as far as the advice that we give and things like that. Because a lot of times when we're dealing with something like this, we can give general knowledge and we can give stuff like that as far as resources. But people do need to remember, as far as coaching, like we can't diagnose you with anything. Like you know what I mean? We can treat symptoms very well. Like as far as like sleep, um, we can do some habit coaching, some lifestyle stuff that definitely helps. Um, but we definitely do not diagnose or
We
anything
cannot
like that, which I
diagnose,
think
right?
some people come to us self-diagnosed, I think is one of
Yes.
the biggest things I see nowadays when it's like I understand you say you have anxiety and depression, but do you actually, or are you just anxious and sad sometimes? Like,
Right. Right.
I think in today's world, that's a big thing that I see a lot too, and it's like because that changes how you have to coach somebody. Um,
Oh yeah. No, it
but
definitely does.
as far as like the, because you were saying you have a few military clients, right? Or prior military. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are some traits that you see uh among them? Just because I want to see how it relates to my experiences personally.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny because when they first come in, they don't really mention anything about PTSD or their experiences. At least a lot of my guys that I talk to, they don't really bring up things that have happened. And that's common. You don't necessarily, and it's not my job to kind of dive into to what happened back in 2010 when you were overseas, right? But my main concern there is like, how's your body? What's happening in your body? But then over time, things kind of start to come to surface. And sometimes it's the smallest little triggers that happen for people. Whereas maybe there's like a loud sound or weights hitting the floor and it's a loud bang, and you kind of see it happen in their eyes for like a split second, and then they're like, oh, okay. Like I'm in a gym, I'm okay. And I've seen that happen a couple of times. And I've also seen where we'll be having a conversation and maybe I'll mention something or ask them a question that again triggers another memory for them. So it's one of those things where it's these small little triggers that happen where you can see physically there's something happening back here, but they don't actually voice it right away. And it takes a while for it to kind of come to surface. But once it does come to surface, it's really about kind of building that safe space for them and
Well,
letting
because
them know
there's
that
that
like this is okay.
the hypervigilance that comes with it. Like some people don't realize that it doesn't have to be like you see in the movies. It doesn't have to be so cinematic, I guess we could say.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that I didn't really understand, and I didn't know what CPTSD was until that's what they started talking about for me. Um, and we can get into all of that in a little bit, but uh, it really is just like scanning, and like you said, it doesn't have to be necessarily that they're looking for something, but they're tense. They have the tension, like, and it
Mhm.
just doesn't go away. They're like always a little on edge. Like
For
it
sure.
could be as simple it could be as simple as that as far as how symptoms present themselves. And another one is distrust.
Mhm.
So they just have a really hard time building relationships, which is, like you were saying, takes a little while to
Mhm.
really get through to them because they don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's hard, as someone I'd never served, but I know plenty of people that have served, and my grandfather served, but they don't, at least from my experience, they don't really talk about what happens when they're not on home soil. And totally understandable. I don't blame them. I wouldn't either, I think, if I was in that situation. And it's interesting. I was working with one vet, and he was just like, you could tell he was having a day, and he wouldn't really tell me what was happening. And I was like, that's fine, but why don't we like, let's take a step back and let's maybe just work on some breathing. And having this man lay on his back in a room where there wasn't any noise, like we were very, very conscious about what was happening in the room, and just close his eye and work on breathing drills. You would have thought I was asking him to like, we're getting ready to test your 1RM on bench. He was There was a lot of things happening, and you're like, I'm sitting there and I'm going, you can, like, I need you to like, you're okay, you're in a safe space, you're with me, we're on the floor, we're just going to breathe just in and out. And it's little things like that that triggered him, and he was very open and honest about it afterward. And he started having a panic attack in the middle of the gym. And so I'm sitting there trying to be like, oh boy, that was my first time dealing with somebody having an active panic attack with me, and
Yeah.
this was years ago. I'm well versed enough, but
And
it
they're not fun.
was
They're not a good time
they're
on
not
either
they're
side.
not
On
well,
either
and
side.
everyone's a little bit different too. And for him, it was just almost like hyperventilating and trying to remind himself and me also trying to be that vocal coach for him, that like we're okay, you're in a safe space, nothing's going to harm you. But it's interesting just to see how veterans, I think, do portray it differently um, than civilians, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're in an interesting time now too, with the military as far as the stigma behind it, and even because even when I was in, I was told by superiors on more than one occasion that, like, we don't talk about our feelings, we drink about it. We drink and we fight. That's what we do.
Right.
Um, and so that's how things were handled, and then so a lot of people wind up really deep into alcohol because of that,
Hmm.
or when they stop drinking, like with myself, they didn't have coping mechanisms anymore,
Hmm.
because I had spent years using alcohol to medicate for everything, um, and then I didn't know that I had anything that they're talking about now, as far as like the CPTSD or anxiety, like depression, um, basically just mood regulation
Yeah.
in general. Like, so navigating that without having been through like combat is interesting, because as someone like who joined the military for combat, like that was what I joined for. That's what I wanted. Um, and that's not what happened.
Yeah.
I know people personally who have Purple Hearts, um, and who really lived that life and everything. Uh, and so I think a lot of people have that feeling of like, I should be okay. Like, why am I not where I feel like I should be? Um, and for me, and for a lot of the people I know, uh, suicide was a big part of it for a lot of people. Like my unit at one point, um, I think we had like 5 deaths in one weekend that was either alcohol or suicide.
Jeez.
Um, yeah. So, and that was not an uncommon occurrence.
Yeah.
Uh, One of my friends, after my most recent friend, who committed suicide, I was talking to another one of my friends, and he has lost. I don't remember the exact number, but it was in double digits. I want to say it was between like 12 and 18. It was somewhere in that range. Just over the last 4 years, that's how many friends he's lost.
Yeah.
Uh, so even if he hadn't gone to combat, like, you can't say that something like that, especially with
Hmm.
uh, the relationship people build in the military, with the people around them, that's not gonna mess somebody up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, so I think, and PTSD in and of itself is still a very new topic, realistically.
Yeah. Well, the mental health
Which I'm sure
conversation
you
in
know.
general is
Yeah,
something that is now, I think, just starting to be talked about almost enough when it comes to
we're getting there.
military relationships, childhood, even just development in general. And uh, I just think it's interesting that there's the neurological impact that you're seeing from it, especially in veterans. It's starting to be talked about and it's starting to be studied, which is very interesting. Uh, but I don't think it's being relayed enough. And so the actual impact that PTSD has on the brain, whether or not you've seen combat, it's like you just said, it's the
Yeah,
way the
there's a
military.
physical change in your brain. Like,
There's a
it
physical change.
physically
It
changes. Yeah.
does. And
It's not
I
just
wish more
like,
people knew that. And if they don't know it, they need to
and it's not
go
even
read
just
about it.
chemical, because yes, there are chemical changes as well,
Hmm.
but there are like physical changes that we can see on
Yes.
imaging.
The
Um,
and I don't know if I put this in the notes that I sent you, but one thing that's interesting, there's three big things that kind of happen. And so the first thing is the amygdala starts to go into hyperactivity. So the amygdala you can kind of think of like as the smoke detector of the brain. It's letting you know when there's like that fight or flight need. And when when that happens, there's that release of stress hormones and cortisol and adrenaline. And so the brain is just preparing us to do something in that moment. But the other thing that's very interesting is that the hippocampus actually shrinks when it's exposed to PTSD and stressful situations. So it's affecting your memory formation, it's affecting recall. So when a lot of PTSD victims are trying to recount a memory, typically it's going to be fragmented and things just aren't necessarily going to line up maybe timeline
And
wise for
especially
people.
in a stressful situation.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
like if
especially.
they're under pressure for any reason, like it really is like I have no idea. Like I could tell you that because uh, when I was getting out again, I'm gonna keep bringing this back to me probably, but
Please,
that's
yeah,
fine.
no, no, do it.
Uh, uh, that's a very real thing. Because especially for the first year, because I'm just past a year out of the Marine Corps now. The first few months, especially though, were like bad once I quit drinking. Um, and I was trying to navigate a relationship at the time while doing it, and
Mhm. That's
that did
hard.
not, yeah,
That's hard.
that was bad.
Yeah.
Um, because it was stuff like that. It was like you said, fragmented memories, accuracies with like timelines, and it wasn't like I just didn't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? And especially in those like high stress situations, like if you're already having like an anxiety attack,
Mhm.
because I would have them. I would have anxiety attacks that would throw me into like full blown like panic, hyperventilating, uh, like can't breathe, like can't feel my hands. Um, yeah, that shit sucks, and like it's awful.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's horrible. And it's hard not like you're in your body, but you don't feel like you're in your body. And so there's this like almost outside looking in of what's happening during that panic attack. And it's scary, but you also can't, you're like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And I know the first time I experienced a panic attack, I had no idea what was going on. And it started becoming a recurring event for me. And I would just break out in a cold sweat. I would watch my heart rate just skyrocket and I couldn't
yeah,
control it. I couldn't bring it back down. I couldn't control my breathing. And it was funny because the first time I experienced that where it was like night 3 in a row where I started having panic attacks, I came into my office and I was talking with our one of our doctors about it, and neither one of us were really like hitting the head on the nail or like it was a panic attack. He was like, well, did you have a drink the night before, like, all right, like what happened? And one of my clients was in the waiting area and could kind of overhear our conversation, and she was actually a therapist. And she came back and started her session. She goes, I couldn't help it overhear like what was happening. And I'm just curious, have you ever had a panic attack before? Have you ever experienced a panic attack? And I go, no. Why? I'm fine. And she goes, this is a card, not mine, but for somebody else. I think you should probably go talk to this person and just kind of maybe you have some things you need to get off your chest and talk about. And yeah, and and I did, and it took a while for kind of things to actually settle and make sense that, oh, my body is actually going through something, my brain's going through something, but I don't know how to actually handle it myself.
yeah. So yeah, those they really do suck. Like if someone is dealing with that, they definitely should reach out and find someone to like guide them through it because it is so not something that is fun to deal with on your own. Um,
No.
so what do you find that your clients need as far as like coaching them versus someone who doesn't have some sort of emotional regulation issues or anything like that?
Yeah. Uh, One, they definitely need boundaries, and there needs to be boundaries on both ends. And so when I have somebody bring up to me that, hey, I'm dealing with some PTSD, or I was recently diagnosed, or whatever happens with that, whatever they choose to share, uh, I want to make sure we're one, not being too intense, but being intense enough. So we need to have these boundaries of like what's okay to talk about and what's okay to share one-on-one and in session, what you should probably talk to your therapist about, and understanding that, again, I think people forget that we're not therapists, and like we said, and like we've said before, but people do vent to us and they do tell us what's going on in their
Yeah.
lives. But there's also a time where I know I have to kind of be like, you need to mention that to your therapist. We're going to continue doing this and A, B, and C, but you need to, like, let's put a post-it note on that and make sure you talk about that with your therapist.
Well, and especially with veterans, because we are dark, a lot of us. So I mean, that was kind of what kickstarted me into therapy was I made a dark joke,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my friends was basically like, "Hey, I know like you're making light of a bad situation and like kind of like haha and stuff," and she was like, "But you should probably talk to somebody because I can tell that you're not okay about it." And I was just like, ah,
Got me.
I was
Yeah.
like, I don't need
Mm.
you to call me out like that right now. I don't appreciate
Yep.
that at all. Um,
It's funny that you
so that
mentioned that.
was what, yeah, usually that's what it takes is someone to be like, no, but really though, you're not okay. And then any one of us is like, take 3 steps back right
Yep.
now.
Let's say that one more time. Listen to yourself one more time. I was gonna mention, I was like, it's the
Uh,
dark humor.
yeah,
And
yep.
it's one of those things where the common saying is now, what I have my what did it say? Like, my trauma doesn't help me or make me go see a therapist, but it gave me some great humor or something like that.
Yeah,
It made
like
me
makes you
funny.
funny.
Which, we all have our things, and we all deal with our things differently, and that dark humor can be hilarious. Uh, but I mean, that's been little things that have popped up here and there for a couple of my clients that are dealing with PTSD. And I have one current client that wasn't officially diagnosed with PTSD, but I kind of had a feeling there was something there.
There's some
And
symptoms. There's and that's something people can realize too, is like you can have
hmm
trauma and
hmm
you can have effects from that trauma without it being PTSD.
yes, yes,
So
there's
both can exist. Both can
this is
exist.
very true. This is
And they
very
can be
true.
treated very similarly,
Yes.
almost identical.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, this client, she would make little jokes here and there, and I'm like, "Ooh, I have dark humor too. I can recognize that, but that one went just a little too far for me." And the more we kind of started sharing some things and getting to know each other, we knew me and her kind of knew that there's something not happening in her brain. Like, I was like, there's something just off, and it took a lot of time and a lot of conversations with her family and things like that. But she finally went to this clinic to get her brain studied, and one of the things they found from her scans and from some of her tests, they were like, you have very complex PTSD. And they could find, because of how her brain was developed, that there were things from childhood that were still affecting her now as an adult because of how her brain looked as a
that's crazy.
a person in her 20s 30s. But they could see the changes that happened in her brain, and like about when her PTSD started for her,
Like
because her brain
reading
didn't
her
develop
brain like a
the
tree
same
stump.
way. Sorry?
They're like reading her brain like a tree stump,
Kind of, yeah.
like counting the rings. Like
It kind of, yeah, it kind of seems like
that's
that.
that's crazy that
But it
we
was
have that
interesting
kind
because then
of
when she
technology.
finally got diagnosed, she's like, I can actually start working through stuff now, and I know what's wrong with me. Um, so she got to experience different types of therapies, and it was interesting because once she finally dialed in and figured out what was going on, and when she started actual therapy, and there's a couple different forms and a couple different ranges of therapy that she tried. She locked in, and she just is a completely different person. I mean, everything just took a complete 180. But that's that's one of those things where, like, we have to have those conversations and those boundaries, but we have to be able to create that safe space at the same time, which is huge,
Yeah,
huge.
because you really need to have I think clear goals was a huge thing for me because especially with the gym, right?
Hmm.
Because someone dealing with uh, elevated stress hormones, probably a lack of sleep, probably not the best diet, probably everything else that goes along with it, right? Um, I was still at the time like going to the gym 6 days a week. I was going to the gym for an hour and a half every day. I was forcing myself to take those rest days, and like I was eating to my macros, but I was also having like protein pasta and
Hmm.
protein granola and like
Mm.
all this stuff to, hit my goals. Because at the time I was a big dude. I was cutting down from 260 um, down to like I think at the time when I got out of the Marine Corps I was like 240.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, so I was still eating. Uh, but my composition was terrible. You could
Hmm.
like I like and like looking back at it now, it's so clear to see that like my body, like my entire system, my entire ecosystem was just under so much stress.
Hmm.
Um, and a huge thing that made a big difference, it was even just a small change as far as going to the gym 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, and like going
Hmm.
from there. Uh, so I think having those clear goals, um, predictability and routine, I think is a big thing as far as creating that comfortable environment. I'm sure. I mean, most people, especially with in-person clients, because I know mostly you deal with in-person still, correct?
Yep.
Um,
Lots of in-person.
yeah, so I'm sure you see most of them at the same time
Hmm.
with their appointments. It's like the same time every day, every week.
Structure is
Uh,
huge. Structure and routine, huge. Absolutely huge.
like you said, just that respect for, personal space and having that autonomy
Hmm.
as like, hey, we are friendly. And it does happen where you do become friends with some of your clients, but
Yeah.
sometimes you have to be like, hey, like
There's a
we
line
have to, yeah,
there.
we have
Yeah.
to um and it is hard sometimes because we're all human beings, you know what I mean? We all want to help. We got into a preventative medicine field. We
We
want
got
to
into
help
a
people.
helping profession.
Yeah.
So it's one of
Um,
those things where when I have somebody that's dealing with PTSD and they're being very open and they're sharing with me some of their experiences, or they're maybe they had a trigger happen last night and they're sharing that with me because maybe it was a nightmare or something happened. Uh, I always feel inclined to share a little bit of mine as well, but I never say I know how it feels because my trauma is different than your trauma. And
yeah,
and
sympathizing with someone versus empathizing with them. It's
exactly.
yeah. You
Exactly.
can still feel like, for lack of a better way of saying it, just feeling bad for somebody without, and being
You
able to
can
be like,
recognize
I've
that
been
like
through the
PTSD
same
in general
thing, or like,
sucks.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which is crazy because I mean, even it wasn't too long ago that it wasn't even a thing. Like it didn't exist.
It's funny because it
And
got
and now we're
very like
scanning people's brains like you're talking about. Like that's
it's very cool. And it's funny because I have this book with me. This is my PTSD Bible. And if people haven't read The Body Keeps the Score, you need to. There's a lot of scientific talk in here and speech and language, but the stories that he shares with his clients and people that he's dealt with are yeah, yeah, yeah. They're very interesting in that a lot of them are veterans that he deals with. Oh, yep, see, twins, yeah. So
that's why I got up. That's fine.
it's very interesting because he does talk a lot about veterans, but he does talk a lot about relationships, which I think is interesting because that's kind of more my specialty. Um, than I'm not, not military, but I do have experience with relationships. Uh, but I think it's interesting that you're getting a little bit of everything in that book. So it's very easy to understand no matter where you're coming from, what your
Yeah, I
background
actually
is.
haven't cracked it open yet, but I do have it.
Well, you need to crack that sucker open. It is it's a very good read.
I'm supposed to be reading 30 minutes to an hour every day, but I have
Well,
not
there
been
you
doing
go.
that.
There's your sign.
But yeah, apparently. I mean, I've
There's
got
your
that one, and
sign.
I've actually got a somatic therapy workbook too for trauma, complex PTSD, and disassociation. I want
Mm-hmm.
to crack that one open too.
Mm-hmm.
But
Disassociation is huge.
yeah,
Yeah, that was one of my little specialties in dealing with my PTSD. When I first started experiencing symptoms, I was like, well, we're just not going to think about it, and I'm just gonna go somewhere else, and I'm gonna be somewhere completely different than where I am right now.
well, that's
And
I shut down and I didn't know. I was very confused. I didn't know like what was going on because I went from being like very ramped up to just nothing. And it
just
was
a
very
wall.
just yeah, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't really know like I don't know. I kept asking like what's going on. Like I don't know. I was very disconnected from everything. It
Well,
was
and that's like when you're reliving trauma or reliving that event or events, like nothing makes sense in the moment. Nothing makes sense. And you just kind of feel trapped in that situation, but also like you're just in a shell. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's interesting that you have this sense of like I'm in danger, but I'm also not in danger. But that's kind of where the brain starts to play tricks on you.
well, because that's how it was described to me. Is like everyone knows about like fight or flight, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also like freeze does the same thing, or is from the same thing, I should say. Uh, and it really is. It's like just like it sounds. Your body either fights back,
Mm-hmm.
runs away, or shuts down entirely. And I know we touched on childhood trauma a little bit as far as like
Mm-hmm.
the common traits. I mean, disassociation is a huge one for that. And I know my therapist keeps wanting to talk about my childhood. And I'm like, I don't really remember it. And she's like,
Gotcha.
ah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I would love to talk about it, but I don't have anything to tell you.
Yeah. Well, and there's parts, I think it's funny because I've had two different therapists, both treating my PTSD. And the first one got me in the door, which I'm very thankful for, but I had a horrible experience with her when I was dealing with childhood PTSD. And I remember bringing up to her at one point because she wanted to kind of dive into childhood and kind of what made me become the person that works herself into the ground as much as I did. And she was asking me about my childhood, and I was like, I don't really remember a whole bunch of it. And she goes, "Oh, that's okay," and like continues on just going. And I'm like, "But shouldn't
what was
I
that?
be able
What was
to know this?
that?
Like, shouldn't I be able to know this stuff?" And she very much just kind of like glanced over it, and it was very much like we had a conversation about what I could remember. But I'm like, but none of that's bad. Like, I don't remember any of that being a bad experience. And then my new therapist, she's like, "Oh, you don't remember? We're gonna work on that. We're gonna try and dig some of this out." And so we've been working with different forms of therapy to try and pull different issues out and actually dive into why I don't remember certain things. And it stems so far as like to when I was an infant, what happened. And that's been very interesting because it made me kind of step back and look at like, oh, this is why I feel the need to be a people pleaser, and this is why I feel the need to seek just just acknowledgement of my
Well, and
existence.
that's another one of the traits for childhood trauma too, though, is that fear of failure and
Mm-hmm.
fear of either being seen or not being seen. I guess depending on the direction your trauma came from. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but absolutely. So that's where I think the grounding practices really come into play. For
It's
me personally, like it because it is super easy to be, at least for me, very aware of like what's going on as far as like even in the moment, like I became very aware of okay, I'm like in an episode basically, right? For like
Mhm.
lack of a better term. Uh, and kind of trying to address it
Mhm.
and being able to kind of like be like, okay, I'm not good, and then it would have like not matter. Just because I could
Yeah.
identify it,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to really address it. Um, and so grounding was a huge thing. Uh, I didn't like the awareness part where it's like, oh, find two things that you can see, three things that you can smell. Fuck you. I I needed to go on a walk,
Yeah.
and distract myself pretty much. I would put on my
Mhm.
headphones, I would listen to a podcast, um, or I would listen to music that put me into a more sympathetic state. Um, Relaxing, not something that's gonna amp me up more because that's
Yeah.
not helping anything. Um, so podcast, listening to people talk, and then kind of just letting my mind wander, and I would go sit somewhere, whatever it was. Um, that's what worked for me. Breath work is another thing,
Mhm.
but I would have to get myself somewhere physically away from that altercation, from wherever I was feeling those emotions. I needed to physically remove myself before I did anything. Um,
Yeah.
because
That's
I felt very trapped uh, when I was like having these feelings.
Mhm.
Almost like someone had me backed into a corner. Like that's how I felt. So I needed to be outside. I needed to get away. Um,
I always had
yeah.
issues with when I was experiencing an episode or a trigger or something would happen. I never sat well with my feelings or my emotions or being in that state. And that was something that one of my therapists challenged me to do was like, no, 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 no. I need you to sit in your feelings and like actually feel what you're feeling. And if you're feeling scared, it's okay. If you're feeling anxious, that's okay. If you're feeling sad about it, that's fine. But I need you to actually sit in it because it got to a point where I was suppressing everything so much. Like that's what triggered my autoimmune was I was suppressing so many things that it triggered my autoimmune.
Well, that's another topic I would love to talk about sometime is just the power of thought and the
Yeah.
power of self-talk and the power of basically using the placebo effect on yourself.
Mhm.
Um, we could do a whole 2 hour conversation on just that
Well,
alone.
and it kind of, if you think
Um,
about it, it leads into this too, right? Because when I was dealing with those experiences and I didn't want to sit with myself in those emotions, I don't sit well, one, to begin with. Two, I don't like to feel things. I struggle to let myself be upset and be sad. I don't like to be emotional. And so I've always taken that and just kind of like I'll start the onset of feeling like, oh boy, I feel like a good cry is coming on. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. I don't need that. So I'm gonna do everything else in my power to distract me from that. And that's where I found the gym. And that's where my brain started to change when I started moving my body. But being okay and being like allowing myself to sit with those things and ground myself and working on breath work, which I still struggle with quite a bit.
but
Uh,
it's I mean a lot of it's time consuming if we're being so
yes,
honest.
it
Like
is.
because like I mean yeah, I want to do yoga and I want to stretch every day and I want to do body work and I want to do this and I want to go on walks and I want to go lift and I want like okay, but that's 4 hours a day of stuff right there, which is great. You
But I still have a
really
full
though,
time
like
job.
it is right, and it is important stuff. And it is something that I think doesn't need to be practiced daily.
Hmm.
Uh, I think at first for a lot of people it does need to be practiced
Hmm.
more at
Hmm.
the beginning, and then as you grow to acknowledge yourself as far as your own emotions and things like that, because like you said, you didn't like dealing with your emotions. Um, Mine turned into anger.
Hmm.
Um, and so for me, a lot of it was identifying like what the actual emotion was.
Hmm.
Um, And then so like you said, you'd feel like that feeling of like crying coming on. The last year of my life, I've cried more than I think I have combined the rest of my life. Um,
Oh yeah, no, same.
and
I get
especially with
it.
and especially with quitting drinking at the same time
hmm
as getting out of the Marine Corps, as the same time that as losing my friends and things like that. Um, and I find out in therapy that they're like, "Oh, did you go through any programs when you stopped drinking?" And I was like, "No, because I don't think I had a chemical dependency on it. Um, so I don't think I needed anything like that. I just
Yeah,
stopped."
yeah.
Um, and it really wasn't until I stopped drinking that I realized how much I wanted to drink,
hmm
uh, and how much it's literally everywhere. But
It's
that
part
was
of
a
the
big
social
thing for
circle.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then apparently it's very common for people who do go through programs to have like emotional breakdowns on like more than one occasion, because most people are using, you know, X, Y, and Z substance
hmm
uh, for covering up that feeling of like welling up. Uh, you
Well, and
know,
it's interesting, yes, because
on a more elevated level, obviously, not
oh
just every
well,
time they
oh
feel like crying,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. No, 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 definitely. One of the things that when I was reading my book again for the billionth time through, that popped up was there's actually science backing that, and I'm not saying this to be like, yeah, just go out and have a little buzz all the time. No, but there is scientific evidence pointing to the fact that when you're under the influence of something, you are less likely, specifically alcohol, you're less likely to experience a traumatic event. And when I was reading that again, I go, oh yeah, nope, that completely checks out. Because I stopped drinking and I'm almost 2 years now, no alcohol. And I noticed when I first stopped drinking, my ex was he was very much like, I don't understand why you're doing this. And he's like, it's not like you have a problem. It's not like you're depending on it or anything like that. He's like, you're less fun at parties now. And you're less fun when we go
that's
out.
annoying.
And I'm
I'd be
like,
like, "Fuck you," first of
what
all.
do you mean I'm less fun? But it was I noticed a huge change in my anxiety, in having like panic attacks pop back up again, and actually like being able to actually feel things that I knew I needed to feel that I wasn't allowing myself to do. And having not having that dependence on alcohol to kind of like throw this mask on of when I'm with my friends or if I'm out just being social, that I needed that to kind of like bring myself down a little bit and calm down a little bit and allow myself to, just be me, Uh it was seeing the body, like the physical changes in my face and how my body composition was, but also seeing
My
the
face
changes.
was round. I can tell you that.
I
Like
was so inflamed all the time.
even with losing weight,
hmm
when I was still drinking, I was just like, I'm just puffy. Just like puffy looking. And like looking back at it, I'm like, it was even worse than I thought it was in the moment.
I know, yeah, I
Because
go back and I look and I'm
you
like,
have a little bit of like blindness almost when you're like
yeah, but it
checking it
was
out. Yeah.
the amount of anxiety that I saw just kind of like melt away, which was huge for me in dealing with my trauma and my PTSD. And I never like I stopped feeling so like just all the time like I had to just be prepared for the other shoe to drop all the time. And so it was seeing and feeling. I'm not saying I was like feeling the chemical changes in my brain, but I started to notice things were just feeling different. I was feeling better. I was sleeping better. My sleep wasn't as fragmented. I wasn't having as many nightmares. There was just this like I felt like I was able to just think clearer, and I was actually it's funny, I did a test after, and there was more like my body was finally producing more serotonin. And I was like, "Oh, look at that happen." Like that's a cool little thing, but it's the chemical changes from not having that dependency of I need this to kind of make me normal in a sense. Yeah.
So there was a point, because for me, even after I had started addressing it, with everything that was going on in my life and the relationship and all that stuff, I wasn't getting better. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I am someone who is like, I don't need medication. I don't need to take
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
Um, I eventually caved and started taking what was it? Lexapro
Mhm.
and what is it? Buspirone, one of those, however it's
Mhm.
pronounced.
Mhm.
It's an anti-anxiety medication.
Yeah.
And I took those for a little while, which did help. And then after it like brought me down, it made me a zombie, and I hated it. Um,
Read this. All the more reason to read it.
yep, absolutely.
That's something that he definitely
But
addresses
I
in here.
I got myself off SSRIs
Mhm.
and all of that, and that's part of why I'm working on my master's in psychology.
That's awesome.
Is because I like to integrate a lot of that aspect into
Mhm.
the coaching,
Yep.
especially since our coaching is really um, the other 23 hours a day besides when you're in the gym because we go over so much lifestyle habits and sleep protocols and hormone protocols and
Mhm.
everything. You know what I mean? Whereas, uh, let's say like a Planet Fitness personal trainer, not to shit on them by any means, but all you're getting is that 45 minutes of someone is telling you what to do and how to do it. That's it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, you don't get much from that,
Yeah.
realistically. Uh, so that's why, in my check-ins, especially, I do ask people like, how are you feeling in your
Mhm.
body? Stuff like that, and getting a real sense for where they're at mentally.
Yep.
Um, and I think having, those trauma-informed language situations, having the calm tone, uh,
Mhm.
invitational phrasing for things, being like, would you be open to X, Y, and Z, as opposed
Mhm.
to being like, this is it. Um, it really is like navigating a minefield with some people, to be honest.
Oh, it
Um,
definitely is. It definitely is. And I think it's funny because I was there for a little bit. I was a little bit of a walking minefield myself. And
I
I
was
mean,
for some people, yeah.
yeah. Made some for some interesting training sessions sometimes. But it's you're navigating a minefield with some people for sure, but you're building that relationship with them to trust you as well. But again, that's kind of where like those lines and those boundaries come into play. Um,
But you have to realistically be gentle in the right way with a lot of them, because especially veterans, especially male veterans, they're gonna put on that hard outer shell a lot more,
yes,
and they're gonna want to like push, 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 push with everything,
yes,
um, when realistically what they need the most is to relax because their nervous system is shot and it's just at all it can handle. Um, and so, in order to actually progress, uh, a lot of times, like I find, yeah, I'm just assuming you find the same, that you need to actually take a few steps back from where they're at when they come to you.
hmm,
Because a lot of them they come in and they're like, hit the ground running, let's go, let's go, let's go, which is phenomenal as a coach. That's what we want to
yeah,
see.
yeah,
But it's like, all right, well, first we need to build some habits. We need to really start evaluating where you're at, what you're doing already. Like, and I think that's the hardest part for a lot of them, is kind of that slower start.
it is.
Because, go
It's
ahead.
those are my only people that I need to like. I'm like, hey, we're gonna pump the brakes a little bit here, and we're gonna take a step back, and we're gonna evaluate kind of like what's happening. And but it's interesting because once they do kind of let me take control of the wheel a little bit more, they're my people that are the most open to yoga and grounding work. They're the most open to it. And they want, it's like they know that they need this. And then when I finally give them the tools for it and they allow me to kind of like weasel my way into that space and be like, hey, we're going to do a yoga session today and we're going to work on breath work. And what does that actually look like for you? They're the most open to it. And they're my people that are the most consistent with it as well. Because even
Well, because I
myself,
think
I'm not like I could do more.
I need to do it. I need to do it more. But I think especially that coupled with oh, I had it. That's what you get for putting your thoughts on a train. Um, but it's not like woo-woo stuff, which I feel like
No.
a lot of people are starting to realize is that grounding, that breath work, the yoga, the um, all of that
Hmm.
is, and the self-talk and the placebo effect of if your brain thinks something is going to happen, that's what's going to happen,
Yes.
is very much like a reality. Like that, like your brain will physically manifest itself through your body. Like
Oh,
so,
100%.
I find that with clients all the time is like the people who say that they can't are 100% correct
Hmm.
because that's just the way that your brain is set. You're telling yourself you can't do it, so you're not going to surprise yourself. Like you're gonna self-sabotage, really. Like that's what's gonna happen.
As soon as I have
Whereas,
somebody that says like, "Oh, well, I can't do that," or like, "I'm just the most unlucky person in the world," I'm like, "Don't put that in the universe. Stop. Like,
yeah,
we need to take a step back and let's." I've told one of my girls the other day, she was having just, it's been a week, for some people, and she was having a week and some triggers were popping up for her and she was struggling this week. And she's like, I'm just like, I'm one of the dumbest people I know. Like, I'm just not smart. I'm XYZ. And I go, I never want to hear that ever come out of your mouth again. And it's one of those things where if you speak it, it's truth, right? And it's this self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's one of those things where you kind of you need that self-talk. We'll just keep going back to that.
yep,
It's
yep.
such a big thing though.
Well,
But
because I do it all the time, even with like especially with like creating my business and everything. Like this stuff is not a quick
no.
thing, right? So it's very easy to find yourself in the what if mindset,
Hmm.
um, which I feel like very quickly turns into just a straight negative mindset.
Hmm.
So instead of because what ifs don't have to be negative inherently, but that's the way that our brains work. That's just what happens.
Yes.
Most people naturally just go to worst case scenario what ifs. If you can start training yourself to like when you do that to acknowledge it and think, okay, but what if this good thing happens? Like what if
Yes.
it's the best outcome?
Right.
Like I've noticed like it really does bring you down from like those elevated heart rates and things like that, being able to be like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe things aren't so bad and not for nothing, like you're putting yourself through it twice. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
uh,
It's funny you mentioned that. I gave myself a panic attack this was a while ago. But I like talked myself into it over
I've
something.
done that.
It's crazy, and it's kind of diving a little bit more into the narcissistic side of things. It When I finally realized that I was living with a narcissist and that my ex was a narcissist, I'm like, oh no. And things like started to finally come together for me, and putting all the pieces together, and that, oh, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not the crazy one. And I questioned myself for a long time of like, is it me? Like, am I the narcissist? Am I the one causing all the issues? I kept playing the what if game in that vicious cycle of, well, what's going to happen if I leave? What's going to happen if I confront him? What's going to happen if blah 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 blah? And I ended up literally talking myself into a panic attack, and then having to talk myself out of said panic attack. And it's one of those things where there's to get myself out of that panic attack, I had to I had to completely unplug. I was like, I need no headphones, no sound, no nothing. Left, walked out of my house and just started walking to try and just put myself into my body, but
Movement is huge.
movement's gigantic. Um, and that's kind of again where a lot of this stuff comes into play, of moving and changing your brain chemistry to deal with that PTSD. But having that connection between your body and your emotions is huge. But self-talk is such a big part of that. Such a big part of that.
I think it's baffling to see like the extent though. I think some people still like as much as we hit on it, some people still just won't understand and they just won't even try it, right? But just to give like an idea of like a personal reference, right? Because we've all seen those amazing stories on the news of someone shouldn't have been able to do something and they kind of were just like, I'm not giving up, right? My dad broke his back in an accident. He got hit head on at like 10 a.m. by a drunk driver. Um, and the doctors told him that he would never walk again and definitely not without like assistance. Um, and he said, "Fuck you, I have a family to feed," and was like he's broken his back again and he is still walking. So
That's nuts.
and the first time he broke his back, because of the way it healed, actually saved him from being paralyzed. The second time he broke his back, which was he got rear-ended. So
Jesus.
he does not have good luck with cars. Neither do
No.
I. I
No.
got that curse from him. I don't know what gene makes you more attracted to car accidents, but definitely got that from him. But it is just like if he had said, "Okay, you're right," to the doctors, he'd be in a wheelchair, or he'd be, you know what I mean? If he was even still alive now, because he would have been on a mountain of painkillers and all these other things. And I think that's a big part of it too, with veterans, especially with PTSD, or really anyone who has PTSD from obviously a traumatic event, right? But like a
Yeah.
car accident or something crazy or scary, like something like that. Uh, I don't know how to better phrase it. I feel like there's a
Where
way
you're like
someone will.
physically injured.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that makes a huge difference in how uh, it needs to be addressed. And
Hmm.
again, just the fact that people don't realize like exactly the I don't know, just the difference you can make in your life just by telling yourself that you can make a difference in your
Well,
life.
yeah.
Like that's really all it
That's what it comes
is
down to.
yeah,
And
and like be delusional about it. You know what I mean? Like dive in head first. Be like, I can do anything. I am
live in your
unstoppable.
Delulu, you know?
Yeah, for a little bit. For a little bit.
Yeah, you're
Within the
realistically
proper
living.
guidelines.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
uh it is, and I think a lot of us are living proof of that because a lot of us do come from, crazy backgrounds and like you said, we all have a story, right?
Mhm.
Um and it doesn't have to be a game of whose experiences are worse or better or
Right.
whatever.
It's not a
Um
competition of who has the most baggage.
yeah, which I feel like some people oddly enough, like when you sympathize with them, feel that way. Do
Mhm.
you experience that? Where
I
someone's like,
do.
"Oh, I have this going on," and you're just like, "I completely understand. I went through this in my life too." I'm like, so
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from, and they're just like, "It's not about you," and it's
You
like,
don't win trauma.
okay, first of all,
Yeah.
this made me not like you, like, but I think that part's crazy too. Um,
That's a whole other topic. But
it
that's,
really
you know,
is.
it's good to have differences because then we can talk about interesting things.
Yes, but I
Um,
think I think to bring it all back from
yeah.
the tangents, it's not woo woo hippy dippy nonsense. And like like you said, we have pretty advanced imaging now to back it up. So we have not only medicine but technology, um, as it advances, backing up the woo woo stuff that it
Yeah.
works.
Well, and
Um,
it's interesting. So kind of like to bring the woo woo and the scientific together, there's they in this book again. Sorry, I'm just gonna. I wish he sponsored this because we'd
We'll
make
have a
extra
link.
things.
We'll have a
But in
my
that book,
Amazon link will be in the bio.
there you go. Yeah, he starts talking about veterans with PTSD and yoga, and bringing it back to that, right? But the chemical change that happened in the brain that they measured because of it, and BDNF was something that was referred to a lot. So brain derived neurotrophic factor, and how it chemically changes the brain when you start incorporating movement when you're dealing or treating PTSD. And you can kind of like, for those that don't know what BDNF is, it's kind of like fertilizer for the brain if you think about it. So it helps maintain like the life of your brain cells, but also like grow new ones too. And there's scientific evidence that the decreased levels of BDNF, which are usually caused by chronic stress, are associated with depression, and that can uh, be changed with body movement, specifically like weight training as well, is what they've seen.
Well, do you think, this is a little off topic, but do you think we're going to see more diagnosis of CPTSD for people, um, as opposed to anxiety and depression, um, considering the overlap and like the way that it seems to be progressing to me, um, is that okay, like CPTSD especially, really is an umbrella that covers all of those things as long as there are those moments that they can connect them to.
Yeah,
Um,
I I do think I do think we are going to see that, but I also think we might see an overdiagnosis of that as well, just as you will with a lot of things right now. But I do think
well,
we're going to
that's
see
I
more
think that's going to cause definitions to change too, and it's going to change the criteria, um, which I mean is normal in a sense as far
yeah.
as like psychology and diagnosis goes, and
Well, and the DSM
um,
is always going to be doing something,
yeah, exactly.
because they're on which version now. So I know we're at least at five, if not more. Um,
I couldn't tell you.
yeah, but I think I think we are going to see more CPTSD, and it's interesting because when I was first diagnosed with PTSD, the first therapist that I had just said PTSD, and then this one now, she's like, "Mm, it's CPTSD," and I'm like, why?
Well, that's with the Marine Corps, the way, or not with the Marine Corps specifically, but with the VA, uh, the way it was described to me too, in order to be diagnosed with just PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
is it has to be a singular identifiable event. That is the reason you have XYZ.
Yes.
Um, and even with CPTSD, you can have multiple events that could all cause PTSD or could all be the reason. But if they still can't identify um, a singular connection for an event and a result as far as like what you're actively going through,
Mm-hmm.
uh, then you won't be diagnosed, even if you fit all the criteria, everything's
Yep.
checked off, all that.
And
Um,
there's so much criteria for it too.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so even if everything is checked off, if they can't identify the singular event or singular events and be able to directly draw those lines,
Mm-hmm.
um, you won't get a diagnosis. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. That's that's the hard part about being, I think, being the person that has to make that decision, is that you're dealing with somebody that wants they want an answer, and they want a diagnosis, and they want, maybe not necessarily a diagnosis, but they just want to know what's wrong. But then you as the therapist or psychiatrist is sitting there like, almost there, not
Yeah.
quite
Well, I mean,
though.
that was me when I went in, and they were like, "What do you want from therapy? What do you want from this?" And I was just like, "I just want to know what's up. Like, what is going on here? Why is this what's going on in my brain?" I need you to tell me why, because you're the professional. Why are you asking me what I want from this?
Yeah, that's the same thing
And
I said to mine was I want to know why I'm having a panic attack because I've never had this.
well, and again, I'm gonna keep referring to veterans, just because that's who I can speak the most to or for. Um, is I was very anti help in all facets. So especially when I started going and like you're doing your intakes and everything. I had a guy with just like a rainbow lanyard, and you could tell he was just like a soft-spoken kid, like just, and I was like, why am I talking to you about my feelings right now? I was like, this, I don't like this.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and especially considering it was after my attempt. And so I was just like, I don't want to talk about this with you. Like, what? Um, and so I was very standoffish to start. Uh, and I just kind of pushed myself through it because I mean there was a time where he asked, he was just the intake guy, so I didn't actually have to talk to him much, but um, he asked me like if I had thought about inpatient, and I was like,
Mm, mm,
I'll go kicking and screaming, buddy. I was like, I promise you, I'll fight. I
yeah.
was like, if you try to do that shit to me, I was like, I will go down swinging.
Mm.
Um, and he was like, just a thought, just like a place to reset and like all this stuff. And I was like,
So casual.
you think you gonna trick me?
Yeah.
You're gonna trick me into inpatient? I was like, first of all, I just made an attempt on my own life, and you think the solution is to take away my shoelaces and lock me in a box by myself with
Yeah.
nothing but my thoughts? I was like, that's the worst thing we could do right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my
And it's
goodness.
funny because the military treats a lot of things in similar ways. Like a lot of the number one thing the military sees as far as issues is alcohol, it's DUIs. Um, and their solution when someone gets in trouble is to lock them in their room
Hmm.
and separate them from everybody.
It's like you need to go
And
sit in
it's
timeout
like,
for a little bit.
yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
are we not gonna, like, why aren't we like making them go to
Why are we talking about why?
therapy or like
Yeah.
something? Yeah. And like, because even if it is just like a kid was being dumb and had a couple drinks at dinner and tried to drive back on base, got caught, whatever. Uh, I would still rather send that kid to therapy to like make sure that like that's why that he was just stupid and fucking 21, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, as opposed to like, okay, well, this guy, yeah, he got caught with like a little bit of alcohol in his system, but he's got all this stuff going on. Uh, should probably make sure he's okay
Yeah.
and not. So I think there needs to be like a huge overhaul as far as that goes, but there won't
Yeah.
be.
Well, and that's where that group and that social
Realistically,
aspect come in too.
yep.
So having that group therapy and that group talk, huge, such a huge benefit.
Well, I have seen for veterans as well. I know there's some that do uh like the vet groups, like they do events, they go on hikes and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So I think that's huge for people because a big part of why people struggle so much uh, post military um, is because you took away their support system.
Yes.
Like there's this person who's dealing with all this stuff, and then like they're doing, we'll say okay just for sake of argument. Um,
But you take away
but you
that
you take
social,
out the social situations, even the fact that just drinking is normal, or
it's a
that
community thing. Like
yeah, or that even just
it,
being depressed, realistically, or being angry, like all those things, like everybody is that way, so you're not
yeah,
alone.
exactly.
As soon as you take out the floor, though, and they don't got nothing to stand on, they're all by themselves. Game over.
No, that's a problem.
Um, so yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. I think there's coaches now as well. like yourself, like myself, who take a higher interest in stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because some coaches don't. Some coaches realistically are just like, hey, I'm here to tell you how to lose body fat. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's all.
Hmm.
But to me, because I'm smarter than these guys that do that, I know that we need to have our brains aligned with the rest of our bodies in order for us to, function as an ecosystem.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, and trauma lives in the body, right? So it's going to
yeah.
affect how you move. It's going to affect how you feel. It's going to affect pain and inflammation. And I don't know if a lot of people actually realize how much it sits in the body and
Well, because
how,
it becomes their new norm.
right.
So they don't know not being in pain. They don't know not being inflamed and tired all the
Mhm.
time and all these things because they
The
just say it's how
constant
they are
brain
now.
fog and fatigue. And that's where what we do helps somebody just like reclaim their body as well. And that goes so far as not just with um, military or veteran PTSD, but that's where I see a lot of my girls that have PTSD from relationships and things like that, physical trauma, where they become a stranger within themselves and they feel this like just lost sense of self and loss of self-worth as well, and just not being comfortable in their own body as well, and not feeling confident either. And that's where you have this empowerment, and they get to just reclaim like bodily autonomy, which is huge for them. And it's huge for like our vets too, especially combat ones that maybe they went through something where they lost a limb.
Well,
That's
because
huge.
even to connect, for the females, especially in the military, the same trauma that
Hmm.
you're talking about, especially with relationships or just um, any sort of just sexual trauma, especially is huge in the military, as sad as it is. Um, I know a handful of women off the top of my head who have had to, uh, deal with some form of assault in the military,
Hmm.
which is disgusting in and of itself. But uh, I do think my theory is that people in the military anyway are predisposed or more likely to have PTSD anyway,
Hmm.
because anyone who's been in the military will tell you it's you know, it's for the Marine Corps especially. Uncle Sam's Misguided Children is the perfect, uh, you know, pseudonym for that acronym,
Yeah.
uh, because the majority are, we all came in broken, man. So like, I think a lot of people who go through that, as far as like going through the military, are already in a situation to have had, whether it's childhood trauma or relationships, things like that. Um, because a lot of people like they're looking for an escape from something in their life when they
Oh,
join the
for sure.
military. Um,
They're looking for escape, and then they see that how much the structure and the community there.
structure really is just huge because especially when someone gets out, or even just for anyone dealing with this in general, right? Not just military,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, but having that regulation. Um, and that balance in their life of safety versus shock, to bring it back to like intensity in the gym, not necessarily pushing someone to failure every set if they're
Right.
dealing with some sort of emotional turmoil.
Right.
um,
Right. 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 But having the structure of having the gym there. And I know, like for myself as a civilian, when I experienced my traumatic event, my initial traumatic event, that kind of started to trigger everything. It was a lot for me to put myself in a situation where I was allowing myself to be vulnerable in the gym, and still didn't like talk with anybody about what happened. It took me years after that event to actually get into therapy. And once I did, I found a sense of control in the gym where I was in charge of what was happening during my workouts, but I also like I found myself again through lifting and through just being active and controlling my body the way that I wanted to control it. And then after years of lifting and pushing all of that down, then I started to actually go to therapy for it. But the gym for a long time was my therapy. And I think we see that a lot with even active military,
Oh,
where that's why
absolutely,
they all have,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And I do think that is something that people need to know as well, is that the gym is a tool, right? Just like everything else. Um, and it needs to be used properly, right? So, just like I was saying before, with my transition out and with pushing my body too much when I was already in a state of, um, chronic stress and inflammation and systemic overload, um, going to the gym 6 days a week was so detrimental because it was making everything so much worse.
Hmm.
Uh, so, these tools that we talk about really need to be used properly. Everything, there's nothing that's a blanket statement. Everything is dependent, right? Much like last time.
Yes, it is. It is. It all depends. It all depends. But there is that, when and if someone does decide to take control over their situation, I think that making sure you find somebody that has these, not expertise per se, but experience uh, dealing with trauma informed training is important. And they're few and far between. Like you said before, you're not going to find something like this in a regular, Globo gym. But it's making sure you're finding a place where there's a safe space for you, where there is that trauma informed training, but for also a lot of people, there's just that social aspect where I think things like CrossFit kind of like they figured that out. So they were like the community, the social aspect of it, I understand. I
CrossFit's
don't
a
want
cult.
to. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. But they figured out the community aspect of it. They did.
Absolutely.
Um, so I mean, kudos to them for that. They did figure that out. I can't knock them for that. But you can find community elsewhere too. You can find it in regular gyms and places. I when I first started training independently, I had a couple people interested in doing like a boot camp kind of thing. And I was like, oh guys, I don't want to do a boot camp. But they talked me into it and we ended up forming this little boot camp. There was like 8 of them that would come religiously week after week. And it became more of like group therapy with movement. And it was interesting to see all of them because they're all special cases. So it's interesting to see them bond over certain things and kind of like share different experiences of what they were experiencing with whether it be autoimmune or PTSD showed up there quite a bit. But it was interesting to see them all kind of just do that with each other without me necessarily. I gave them the environment for it, but I wasn't the one that started this whole thing. I was like, well, I'll show up and make sure y'all don't hurt yourself and like I'll help. But I'm not gonna sit there and run a group therapy class, and that's eventually what it ended up turning into.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that is kind of, I mean, like we always say, that's what happens to us. Like, because pretty sure we all start the session the same way. We ask them how they are. We ask them how their day or their week has been. Um, and usually that's enough. That's, the floodgates have been opened.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. But that's how it goes. And it's one of those things too where I had some people share how they were dealing with their trauma. And one of the interesting things that did come up was just certain usage of substances and the different substances that were used to help deal with trauma, which I thought was very interesting. Um,
yeah.
a couple ayahuasca conversations came up
Well,
and
that's
things
I
like
think
that.
well, especially now because I know like ketamine now is
Hmm.
being used like real close to recreationally. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah, no, it is though.
as far as how easy it is to like get it done. It's kind of the same as like when marijuana was going through legalization in a lot of locations, uh, getting a medical card was as easy as saying you get headaches. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so like, at what point are we really just making it legal? Like,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
I think ketamine is crazy just because coming from, uh, my background as far as before the Marine Corps. I've seen people on ketamine and doing cocaine and things like that, and it's like I can't mentally like I can't separate those two things. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So I'm seeing this guy in a slump on the couch, and like over here though they're using it, and people are coming out saying like they've never felt better, um, and then just like a quick session, like all this stuff, and I'm like that's crazy. It really, again,
Yeah.
just goes to show like everything is a tool. Um, I use marijuana
Hmm.
regularly.
Hmm.
Um, my coach, Caden, love that guy. He says it all the time. He's like, this motherfucker is always smoking. And I'm like, yeah, dude. But you know what? I smoke all the time and I don't have to take pills anymore that made it hard to get out of bed. I don't have to take pills anymore that made my heart rate impossible to raise. Um, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone talk about that aspect of it. Is like I was in the gym trying to get like going and warmed up, and like my heart rate was just like 50,
It's like,
just
no, we
sitting
good.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, I'm trying to like get into that uh, physical state where my body is ready to work and it couldn't, and that like was just making everything worse. So there are options out
Oh
there.
yeah.
If
There's
you can smoke weed instead of taking pills or drinking, I personally I say smoke weed.
It's a little bit of a
Um,
better, I mean, a little bit of a safer route, I feel, for most people. Uh,
yeah, and it doesn't have to be smoking weed either. Like
yeah.
obviously there's like now gummies are like the most popular thing. Um, especially for like the CBD gummies and like the nighttime stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I think we are heading almost into a modern day like holistic health era
Hmm.
almost.
I'd like to think
Because I
so.
I do think, I mean, we could probably talk about that. We're gonna have to,
That's a whole other
yeah,
that's the doctor
yeah,
conversation.
we
That's
we could do holistic
we
health.
addressed a little bit of that. Yeah.
But all right, so just for some final thoughts,
Yeah.
uh, if you're a coach, take this stuff seriously. Um, and like Ali said, you gotta know when it's okay to be joking around and know when to kind of be like, hey, bud, are you doing all
We
right?
took it one step too far.
Yeah, just making sure we're
Yeah,
good.
yep. But I think
Um,
it's also important to have, especially if you're in a coaching field, to have references like right on hand. So I
absolutely.
know, like at our facility, we have a literal sheet of just references. I always keep references with me wherever I go, whenever I'm training a client. You just never really know what you're gonna encounter. But I
Yeah,
feel like making sure we understand too, just as coaches, that we don't diagnose, but we are here to help and to kind of guide as well,
absolutely.
and offering that assistance, but also making sure that we are, like I said, creating that safe space, but recognizing triggers, what they are for people, because they're going to be different for different people. But making sure that we do ask everyone, how are you in your body today?
Yeah. Yeah, how are you like how are you that's why we ask. That's why we ask
Yeah.
how are you feeling?
And you
And
know when
so
someone's BSing you, for sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
real quick.
Hmm.
Usually pretty fast.
Yeah.
But if you're a client, um, or just someone making it day to day, know this: you're not broken. You don't need fixing, but you might need support. You definitely need structure. I personally believe everyone needs some form of structure in their life. Safety, and sometimes a damn good coach who gets it can make a difference. And if cannabis is part of your healing, then so be it. You're not
Let it
lazy.
be.
I
Yep.
don't think so. You're not weak. If using that works and it's the right plan, that's powerful. Uh, if anyone has had experience with ketamine. I would love to hear more about that now that we got that ball rolling.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that because I know that's new. Um, but some you had some resources you wanted people to be able to check out, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. There's definitely, I mean, I will say this until I'm blue in the face. This book, The Body Keeps the Score, just throw it in the Amazon cart now. This is a great resource. What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu is also a great resource. Different organizations are always great. Wounded Warrior Project. There's one, I think it's nationwide, but I know we definitely have it in Texas. Casualties of War is great, helping veterans basically go from serving to civilian life. They have great tools, great people working in that organization. But ultimately, there's never any harm in asking for help, just in general. This book does have a list of references that's um, probably about this thick at the end of just different ways to reach out and to ask for help, and different references as well, depending on what kind of experiences you're having and trauma you have.
Beautiful. I don't think it could
Yeah.
have been said any better.
Awesome.
Coach Allie, thank you for being here. Tell us where we can find you as usual.
So as usual, really my big place that I hang out is on Instagram at ali as in badass fitness. So you can find me at
Perfect.
ali.bfitness on Instagram.
Perfect. And to everyone listening, keep showing up, even if it's slow, even if it's messy. You're not alone in this. This is SPG Unfiltered. We are live on YouTube and Spotify now. And we don't coach to impress, all right? We coach to impact. So see you next time.